Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Diversity and Inclusion interview series. I'm so excited today because we have an expert. Her name is Roshaunda Green, and we're going to be focusing on microaggression. And let me just tell you a little bit about Roshaunda. She has to be the most can-do person that I've ever met. She has this amazing ability to just have that attitude that she can do anything. And when I met her, she also shared with me that, she is a subject matter expert in diversity and inclusion with over 10 years of experience in that field. And she has held various leadership positions at companies like Cox Automotive, Georgia Highlands College, and Turner Broadcast Systems, Inc. So I just want to welcome Roshaunda today. Hello, Roshaunda, how are you?
Judi, I'm doing great. How are you? And thank you so much for reaching out to me and inviting me to join. I'm really honored and humbled. And I'm
Oh,
excited about the discussion today.
yeah, you're so welcome. I'm honored to have you here. And let's just jump right in. I just want to get a sense as to, how do you define microaggression? So let's kind of get a sense as to we're all on the same playing field of what do you mean by that?
So, microaggressions are defined as verbal, behavioral, or environmental humiliations that communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative racial slights and insults to a target person or group. Now, these incidents in which someone accidentally or purposefully makes an offensive statement or asks an insensitive question, they may be indirect or often intentional expressions of racism, sexism, ageism, or ableism that can make a workplace feel uncomfortable, unsafe, and toxic.
Hmm. Wow, that is a really great definition. And I'm just thinking back when I was growing up, I even put it in the context of my family. Like, it could even be a comment that like I got from my brother. Like he would be like, "Oh, you're pretty ugly," right? So it's like, so it's like sometimes it can be said like as a joke. Like that's what I
Mm-hmm.
interesting about microaggressions because I think there may even be some passive aggressive, kind of behavior involved because it's like, oh, I was only kidding. Sarcasm can also really hurt. And it sounds like it can potentially play into this microaggression. Is that accurate?
Yes, and that's why we always have to like check ourselves, right? Maybe we need to take a 10-second pause. When you're in the workplace, you just got to stick by the rules. You have to be politically correct. It's best not to talk about politics or religion or your opinion, especially if you don't have, a really close relationship with that person. And even when you do, just, really check and make sure you're not crossing the line because you're not at home. They're not your relatives. You're in a workplace. You're evaluated for your behavior. And you always want to have a really strong and solid working relationship that is at the beginning of everything is respect.
Mm.
Respect, cordial, and always make sure that you're putting yourself in the other person's shoes. If you have to think twice about what you're about to say, stop. That's a sign right there. You're about to say, and you're like, maybe not. Okay, check yourself right there because if you have to think about it 9 times out of 10, it's inappropriate.
Right. And what's so interesting is, my expertise is in intuitive leadership. And it's like you have to pay attention intuitively. There's a balance, right? You have to pay attention to your body wisdom because sometimes we get those little tweaks in our stomach or we get those feelings of tension of like, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Sometimes after the fact, but even sometimes before those things come out of our mouth, it's like, oh, I wish I wasn't saying that right now. Because sometimes we can pick up also on the body language. I think that's a really important thing for people to know. It's like you have to be able to read the room. But the other thing that I want to reiterate and underline what you said is like respect. Really having respect for other people, but it's also with compassion. It's like being compassionate that what, we're all trying to do the best we can. And at the same time, when we're making assumptions or having expectations about, oh, everybody's like the way I am, or oh, everybody thinks the way I do, it's like it's actually not accurate. And I can tell you I've gotten in trouble with that because I have such strong beliefs about certain things. And then I've stepped in it, I've totally stepped in it. So what happens when somebody steps in it, right? Like when that happens, like what's something that somebody can do you think?
So I think you really made a good point, right? Because we're not robots, we're human beings, and at the end of the day, no one is perfect. So I pride myself in this. I will go back to someone like, sometimes we'll be in a meeting and, sometimes, we're playing or maybe I'm presenting or something like that. And I'm always like checking the rooms, picking up vibes. I'm very sensitive. I'm a high feeler and I'm an extrovert. So I try to like make sure I'm connecting with people, on an intimate level so that I make sure that my communication kind of matches how they'll receive it. So there have been times when I was like totally innocent and saying something, and I'll kind of pick up a vibe from that person, and I'll go to them after the meeting or an interaction one on one, and I say, "Hi, I'm sorry. Do you have a minute to talk? I just have a question for you." I was like, "Did I offend you?" When I asked you, or when I asked you about the process, and I kept kind of digging a little deeper to kind of understand your execution style. And it seems like you kind of got put off a little bit, or you felt like I was attacking you. Are we okay? And then sometimes people don't want to feel um, pressured or feel like they're interrogated, and they're uncomfortable in that moment, and they're just like, oh, no, 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 we're good. So sometimes I'll dig a little deeper and I'll say, okay, so, but moving forward, okay, if you said we're good, but I just still kind of feel weird about this. Moving forward, what's the best way to communicate with you? Or, before the next meeting, if I have anything that kind of touches your area of expertise, maybe I'll come talk to you first and kind of get your thoughts about it. And then in the meeting, I'll bounce it to you so that you'll be prepared, because it felt like I kind of caught you off guard a bit, and that was not my intent, and I didn't mean to, throw you under the bus or anything. Whatever, your reaction was, I want to make sure I'm respecting you,
Mm,
because on the team together, we're working on this project. We work for the same company, right? I want to make sure I'm respecting you. So sometimes people feel uncomfortable with you approaching them to try to even address the microaggression, or while you're trying to repair or fix it. So this is where everyone has to be, and it's uncomfortable for me too, even
right,
though you have, I laid out my pride, I laid out my ego. I apologize when I didn't mean to do anything wrong. But if it'll make you feel comfortable, and if it'll let you know that I respect you so much that I'll admit I'm wrong, because I wasn't aware that that would have offended you. And that's where we all have to, like, really become adults, put our feelings aside, put our pride aside, and just have that uncomfortable conversation. So moving forward, we'll have a great working relationship. Now, you
right,
don't have to be my best friend, but let's be respectful, let's be cordial, and let's try to uplift each other.
right.
That just takes away all of that uncomfortableness and
Yeah.
everything. I don't want a toxic work environment. I don't want to have to tiptoe around you. I don't want to walk in a break room and you're in the corner talking about me when I was like trying to fix this. That's what's going on here,
Right. And I really want to underscore, because I loved, what you were talking about, which it was just personal responsibility and vulnerability, and the sense of, how can we have emotional intelligence? And I think that all of those are great ingredients when it comes to diversity and inclusion. It's like, it's important to remember that when we take personal responsibility for, what our behavior is, it opens up a dialogue. It's easier to open up a conversation other than going directly for, did I see this? It's like, oh, let me take responsibility. So I really want to underscore that. But I just loved your tone, because what you did is you really projected your voice in such a way that it's not, it's very calm and it's very respectful, and it's very much like, we're all just trying to do the best we can, and it's creating that sense of community. And yeah, I mean, like you said, it's like having a healthy work environment. So being able to have that energy flow, to me, it's like message sent is message received, and the energy that our words flow on are so important. And it can be just that little switch in our tone of voice that can make all the difference. So you did it great. It was awesome to hear you.
And I'm glad you said that, right? Because when I start breaking things down and you start thinking of, wait a minute, so I did this. So what's the process I can use moving forward? So I think when you approach that person, you disarm kind of all the vices, right? So whether in that moment they get it, or maybe they have to process it, or sometimes people will go talk to their spouse, or maybe their other coworkers, or their friends, right? And they'll talk about, hey, Roshaunda just came to me and she was like apologizing. I was like, whoa, I kind of got caught off guard about that. But you're disarming, any negative intent, right?
Mhm.
And I come to them, I'm like, I'm really sincerely, honestly apologizing for, anything that I could have done to offend you. And
Right.
then you're defying it, right? Because I'm uncomfortable in the conversation. And for people to kind of like push back and be like, no, we're good, defy it, challenge, what they're saying, just to kind of like get out of that uncomfortable space and
Mhm.
kind of dig a little deeper to understand.
Mhm.
And what I think you do is you kind of decide. You're controlling what that incident will mean in your workspace, in your relationship with that person, and then how that interaction will build on future interactions. And that was just, I gave you a really light example, right? But there have been some times when, you're in a cubicle or an office or something like that, and someone will say like some very disrespectful things like, oh man, I can't stand her, or at least she's good for something, or oh my goodness, I should have known she was a Democrat, I should have known she was Republican, or some horrible, horrible things, like, or black people always do this, or white people always do that, or this is why, I don't hire, these types of people, or this is why, I don't hire people from, this part of the United States, or from this university or college, or, we have so many little things that whether they're said to you face to face, or you hear them in passing, or sometimes it comes back to you from a third party, you have to really decide how to deal with those things. And
Mhm.
it's definitely okay for you to process that. But if you're overwhelmed and things are really, really out of your league, it's okay to go to your human resources, business partner, and have that conversation in confidence and say, hey, this happened. Can you counsel me or give me some advice on how I should respond to that person, or
Mhm.
even your spouse or your partner or anything like that? Because sometimes you do have to process it yourself, because your first reaction may be disrespectful. It may be a microaggression against them because
Right.
you're offended. And now you don't care you're at work. And all of a sudden, now we're in a space where one microaggression against another microaggression, and now you're both wrong.
Mm.
And that's what you don't want.
Oh, I love that you pointed that out because originally, like as you were giving even the examples, and those were really good, like specific examples, and we can all like relate to that. Oh yeah, I would never work with a person like that, or oh, if it was my choice, I would never, and like you overhear these things sometimes, even in passing. But what's interesting is I visualize them as like little arrows. It's like this arrows that we send at each other that are so hurtful, and we may not even realize how hurtful they are. And as humans, right, 7 billion people on the planet, I know this from being in the space of leadership development, we have this knee-jerk reaction of wanting to do it back. It's like as any
Yes.
time that we are considered, that we're getting rejected or we're getting judged, we want to judge back. It's a normal human thing. But let's also say that while that is like door A is the knee jerk reaction, door B is the conscious choice. And as leaders, we give up the right to be in our comfort zone all the time and just play by the programming that we have. As leaders, we need to be able to step into that space of saying, I'm going to make a conscious choice of how I want to behave, because like it or not, every day people are watching us in terms of how we're behaving. And I even heard someone say to me the other day, it's like, every day that we're at work, it's like a job interview because people are watching us. And it's a little bit interesting now that a lot of us are in the Zoom world, for, or I should say our digital video world right now with meetings and whatnot. But people really are, they're watching us and our behavior, even sometimes more so when we're in meetings now, because they can see it, right? When our cameras are on, it's like, full center right in somebody's screen. So it's important for us to think about how those little arrows that we shoot that again may not be intentional or actually maybe how we truly feel, but it's not appropriate, and how can we make conscious choices to be that good leader and be aware of our biases or our opinions and judgments about others, because that's not necessarily going to create that space where people are going to feel safe, because that's truly where people thrive, when they feel like they can be safe to say what they want. So I think in some ways, and actually I would love your opinion on this, because I hear from people sometimes, it's like, oh, if I'm supposed to be politically correct, then I don't feel like I can be myself. Like, what do you say to someone like that,
So that is a great question. And right now, you have to really think about it, right? So a lot of coworkers and employees, they're attached to each other's or connected, right? They're on LinkedIn, they're on Twitter, some are Facebook friends and things like that. So sometimes people are liking, sharing, or posting things. And the line with personal and professional is really blurred now, right? Because some of those conversations may come up in the workplace. Oh, I saw you were at that rally, or I saw you were at that protest, or the post that that you put up there yesterday sounds like you were really angry, right? So now it's kind of bleeding into the workplace, and it's getting it is getting kind of, you've brought the personal into the professional. So being politically correct now is some blurred lines there. So I think that while organizations are encouraging these candid conversations on race in the workplace, we can't ignore historical backlash, whether you were, a minority or a female, or, whoever your holistic whole person is. With the organization kind of encouraging these conversations, I think for the basic of it is sometimes training to have these candid conversations, what lines to cross, what is a safe place, right? Sometimes it's really not an employee's place to try to educate another employee about what's politically correct and how they should conduct themselves, right? Sometimes it's resources. Sometimes it's your diversity and inclusion professional. Sometimes it's a class on your professional development, department, and you maybe need to take that class on having hard conversations, or cultural intelligence, right? Unconscious bias. Like, don't just think that you're equipped with everything that you have now just to go and have a conversation with an employee that can really kind of get you in a place where you really don't want to be. So with that, it's like I'm going to say it again. It's okay to talk to your human resources business partner. It's okay in your one-on-one with your manager to say, hey, can I just talk to you about something? This happened with this employee, and can you give me some guidance and your thoughts on how I should handle that? And a lot of times your manager may have some insight for you. Okay, I've heard that from another manager about that employee too. I'm glad you came to me. What I would recommend is this. And that's great, because I'm going to take this to my supervisor, because maybe it's time for us to have a workshop, or we can include this in training, because it's coming up more often now. So it's you're not a snitch. You're not throwing anyone under the bus. You're just trying to make sure that you're getting that microaggression while it's little, right? Because right now you have a snowball, but you're not saying anything, and you're trying to be politically correct. You don't want to backlash, and all of a sudden it's a snowman, and now everyone's throwing around each other, and then you're like, having a hard time. It's hard to work with someone you don't trust. And projects sometimes, short amount of time, you got a lot to do, and I can't tiptoe around you. if I can't trust you, right? If I can't get the job done properly and I can't focus on the project, if I'm tiptoeing around you or if I don't trust you,
Mhm.
then it's just make, things very stressful,
Right.
right?
Right. So what
Unless
I'm hearing you
and
say though is like first you have to take the responsibility of educating yourself, right? Because there's probably a lot of resources out there. But also, if you've done a good job of educating yourself and trying to figure out like how maybe I can respond myself, and then if that really doesn't feel good, then like you said, go to a manager, go to somebody in diversity and inclusion if you have that person in your organization or HR, but really take the steps to actually support yourself and how you're learning, because this is an ongoing learning process. Everybody is learning right now. Everybody is having a sense of more awareness, and some people are resisting and some people are accepting it. And I guess that's also really important. But like you said, there's also training available. Like there's many different ways that we can, as leaders, take our leadership seriously and be able to educate ourselves and make ourselves the best leaders that we can be. Is that
Yeah, and
accurate?
Judi, I want to add one more thing, right? Because yes, I manage business resource groups, and I just saw so many positive things come from being on business resource group leadership teams or just being a member of a group. So one thing that I did was, yes, I'm African American, I'm a woman. Yes, I have children and things like that. So, like a parent BRG or African American BRG or a women's BRG, those are the things that if you look at me, you would say, okay, that's probably a business resource group that she would join. But what I did was I joined groups, like I joined the Latino business resource group. I joined the Asian Pacific business resource group. My grandfather and some of my relatives are veterans. I joined the Veterans Business Resource Group. I know I have family members and friends that are disabled, whether it's visible or invisible disabilities, right? So I joined those business resource groups that would help me to better understand people that are outside of my scope of understanding, because that's the way that I'm going to learn how to interact with you. That's how I'm going to learn how to work with you.
Oh my
That's how I'm to educate myself culturally on how to embrace you. Because if I am in a business resource group and I look around and I see everyone that looks like me and is thinking like me, we have this group think. And are we really being inclusive if we're all the same? So I want to be very careful. I think it's great to have an African American, a parent or women's resource group and you join those. But I also want to encourage you to step outside your cultural comfort zone and join those groups that you need to learn more about. And it was interesting. I started looking at who I was going to lunch with every day or who I would sit by in meetings. And I was like, I'm sitting with myself. I'm going to because we're all saying the same things. So, that's when you just open it up and say, hey, everybody, we're going to lunch. If you guys want to join us, come on, right? Or,
God.
or hey, I've been, working with you for a while, but I really don't know who you are. Can you have coffee? Or, tea with me, or can we go out to lunch? And then we start learning that from the surface, we don't look alike, but when we start talking, there's so many intersections. And I'm like, wow, I would have never known. So
Mhm.
you have to really get outside of your regular program or your regular group, and just start interacting with people and reaching out to people, because we can talk about diversity and inclusion, we can talk about these microaggressions that are taking place, but if we just take the time to get to know each other, get a better understanding of each other, then maybe some of those things won't come up as much,
Right. And
right?
I just have
At
to
the end
say
of the day,
though,
we have to connect on a human level.
yeah, I just have to say, I love that idea of, yeah, joining those other business resource groups that we actually haven't, we don't necessarily have an obvious connection to in order to educate ourselves. Because when you immerse yourself in someone else's culture, like I think about, when I would go to Europe for business, it's like I would do some kind of, an immersion in what do I need to know about the culture of whatever countries that I'm going to, because I didn't want to offend anybody. Well, sometimes it's the person sitting next to you. And the other thing that I love about joining those business resource groups is that they then become your friends. And you never want to offend your friends. And that to me, it's like if you think about the golden rule of like, you know what, just do no harm. And how can you treat people like your friend? And when you expand your definition of what a friend is, you never want to hurt them. You never want to do that. So how can we show up wanting to make friends? Or and then again, I don't mean like we have to be besties, but it's like how can you just have that friendly kind of attitude, just like, having a can-do attitude and having that friendly attitude, like they go together. Like I think they're a great match.
And
So
Judi, I just want to add this too. And if we're friends with each other, it's easier for me to say, "Hey,
yep,
what you said yesterday, or what you just said at lunch, when we were with the group, kind of didn't feel comfortable with that. Yeah. Oh my goodness, I would have never thought that offended. Yeah, it's so funny because like when you're an extrovert, they think you just, Superman, Wonder Woman, right? And they think you're just bulletproof and nothing hurts you. No, no, sometimes those extroverts are some of the most sensitive people, and they're probably, engaging and interacting with people because they may be fighting a people pleasing kind of mentality that they have. Like, oh, I want to be everyone's best friend. I want everyone to, embrace me. And I'm putting forth all my effort to let you know how awesome I am. And those are sometimes some of the most sensitive people and they wear their feelings on their sleeve, but you would never know it, right? When you start getting to know them, that's something that they may kind of have behind like a wall. But then you say, I had no idea. Yeah, yeah, but I know you didn't mean any harm, but moving forward, something that simple. So now we're, friends and we're uplifting each other. And now you go a little deeper into the layers and really start to understand this person that you are friends with, and you get to know them better, and you start communicating with them better. And every now and then you may have to pull them aside and say, hey, yeah, let's keep my kids out of that conversation. I gotta share you, but I want, everyone to know that kind of, oh, okay, thanks for that. And that's the mutual respect.
right.
You're
It's
saying,
almost like becoming a wingman, like being a wingman or a woman. It's like, again, going back to my younger years when I would go out into the bar scene, right? And I'd have my wing woman with me. And sometimes it's like you do need that person that's just like, yeah, you're dancing a little crazy right now. But
yeah,
but this is obviously in the workplace. But I just kind of want to make an analogy of like having that person that you trust, that you respect, and that you'll respect them when they give you a little nudge. So I am so grateful for this conversation because I think we uncovered so many great golden nuggets and suggestions and really got to understand like what is microaggression, what does it look like, what does it sound like, and how can we relate to it so that it doesn't feel like that we're being told to, oh, you can't be yourself, but how can you be more of yourself? How can you expand and be that leader that is inclusive, that respects people?
so we talked a lot about accidental, microaggressions, right? But for the people that have intentional microaggressions and they're really trying to be disrespectful and they're really trying to hurt you and they're really trying to sow discord in the workplace, when you confront those people in compassion and respect and honesty, now they may not like you, they may not even feel differently about you, but you're going to respect me, right? So we didn't walk away from this, skipping off into the sunset, and now we are best of friends. But guess what? You're going to respect me, and we're going to honor each other's boundaries in this workplace,
Mm-hmm.
um, and we're going to be cordial with each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So everything is not going to end up with, oh, I am so sorry, I didn't mean that. Some things may come up with, okay, so moving forward, this is how we'll conduct ourselves, in the workplace.
Right.
And that will not be a line that you will cross again, right? And sometimes HR may have to be in the room as a mediator, and sometimes unfortunately someone may have to get written up like a verbal warning or something like that, because some things are just unacceptable. So I
Mm,
want people to walk away from this thinking that everything is accidental and no one means any harm, and everyone is here to uplift each other and empower each other, because that's not the world we live in. So
right. Yeah.
some things need to be addressed in different ways. So
Right.
that's the only thing that I wanted to, I
Yeah.
don't leave people with false expectations of that was just a Smurfy way to deal with it. No, we're not a Smurf land. No, Papa Smurf is not going to come over here and help us out. No, we're in the real world and real things are happening, and we need some real solutions to some real problems.
Yes. And I want to just emphasize what you said. Number one, when we're leaders, right? I know there's a quote, I'm not sure who said it, but it's like, if you want to be liked, sell ice cream. But if you want to be a leader, you're not always going to be liked, right?
Mhm.
And I'm sure I messed up that quote. So forgive me for that. But we have to sometimes confront things that are intentional or that, are happening. And then the other thing that you mentioned is, and I also want to add and dovetail what you said about boundaries. It's like sometimes the boundaries that we set, we have to keep them with ourselves. Like we have to own the boundaries. Other people may not, they don't have to buy into our boundaries, but it's like, how do we keep our own agreements with ourselves? And it's that quote of, you teach people how to treat you. So it's like when you are in your, in grace and in control and in your leadership and showing up as that powerful person that you are, it does teach people how to treat you, how to treat you. So I think that is a wonderful note in terms of how we can end this lovely conversation. I could talk to you for hours. Thank you so much, Roshaunda. And for everybody that's listening today, you know what? We have more interviews that are coming. So if you haven't done so already, please hit the subscribe button as well as the notification bell down below. That way you'll get all the interviews that are coming out. And I look forward to continuing these conversations because you know what, at the end, we still have questions. So please, you can also post your questions down below and we will answer them. So I look forward to seeing you next time on the Diversity and Inclusion series. And we'll see you then. Bye for now.